Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to conduct a really comprehensive biographical evaluation of a historical figure whose life honestly reads like an epic novel. We are looking at Humayun, the second emperor of the Mughal dynasty. This is a ruler who inherited this massive, volatile kingdom, lost absolutely all of it in a completely humiliating defeat, and then, against all odds, clawed his way back from exile to forge a legacy that would set the stage for one of the greatest golden ages in history. As we evaluate his growth from this sort of entitled prince to a truly resilient emperor, we're going to see how catastrophic failure can sometimes be the ultimate teacher.
Think of this as our syllabus for today's evaluation. We'll cover his heavy inheritance, the fracturing of his empire, his personal transformation in exile, reclaiming the throne, his Persian-inspired second reign, and finally, his tragic end and enduring legacy. Let's get started.
Section 1. The Prince's Heavy Inheritance. Growing up in the shadow of Babur.
Now, what's really interesting about this timeline is the sheer, suffocating pressure he was under in his early years. Born in 1508 into immense privilege, he got a top-tier education in politics, history, and the arts. But as the eldest son of Babur, the legendary conqueror who actually founded the Mughal Empire, Humayun's classroom was often the actual battlefield. By 1526, he's fighting right alongside his dad at the First Battle of Panipat, seeing brutal, cutting-edge tactics firsthand. Yet, when Babur dies in 1530, the 22-year-old Humayun inherits this incredibly wealthy throne, but it's resting on a deeply unstable foundation. It's a classic historical trap, right? Inheriting the crown without having the undeniable, hard-won authority of the conqueror who forged it.
He inherited the land, yes, but he also inherited deep, systemic internal conflicts. Right out of the gate, Humayun faced fierce resistance from zamindars. These were powerful local leaders and chieftains who had absolutely no interest in bowing to some new, young emperor. Add to that the fact that he was dealing with incredibly ambitious brothers, particularly Kamran, who actively coveted his power. Humayun was basically trying to hold together this fragile puzzle where all the pieces were actively fighting back. Just imagine trying to establish your authority when every local warlord, and even your own siblings, sense your youth and inexperience as a glaring weakness. It was a total recipe for disaster.
Section 2. Fractured empire and defeats, the high cost of hubris and old tactics.
And this comparison brilliantly illustrates exactly how family rivalry and outdated strategies left the young emperor highly vulnerable. There is just a stark contrast between Humayun's initial shortcomings and the fierce efficiency of his greatest rival. On one side, you've got Humayun struggling to maintain basic alliances, dealing with brothers who categorically refuse to cooperate, and relying on old battle strategies that were simply too slow for the shifting political landscape. On the other side, we have Sher Shah Suri. He's a brilliant Afghan leader who united local chieftains, secured ironclad alliances, and mastered these incredibly unpredictable guerrilla tactics. Sher Shah literally saw the deep cracks in Humayun's armor and drove a wedge right through them.
Look at these two devastating classroom milestones. This is where Humayun lost absolutely everything. First, at the Battle of Chausa in 1539, his traditional battle lines were completely overwhelmed by Sher Shah's rapid surprise attacks. Total panic spread through the camp, his forces fell apart, and he suffered a crushing defeat. Humayun desperately tried to rally for a rematch the next year at Kanauj in 1540, but again, lacking solid allies and abandoned by his own brothers, he walked right into Sher Shah's carefully laid traps. He was decisively defeated, stripped of his crown, and literally chased out of his own kingdom.
Section 3. Exile and Personal Transformation. Finding Strength in the Abyss.
Wandering without a home or an army after 1540, Humayun enters the darkest phase of his life. But as he sought asylum in foreign courts, his personal life provided the ultimate anchor. In 1541, he marries Hamida Banu Begum. And guys, this wasn't just a romance, it was a brilliant partnership and a massive turning point in our biographical evaluation. Hamida was incredibly wise. She provided emotional support and really sharp political counsel that helped Humayun navigate the tricky, high-stakes politics of his exile. Together, they connected with powerful families, slowly rebuilding his credibility. And crucially, they had a son named Akbar, linking their renewed hope to the very future of the Mughal dynasty.
So the crucial point for us to evaluate here is that biographers universally agree on one thing: losing everything was the exact catalyst required for his transformation. The entitlement of the young prince was literally burned away in the harsh desert of his exile. He learned genuine humility. He learned the absolute necessity of diplomacy and building authentic alliances. And perhaps most importantly, he learned that sheer resilience is what separates a king in name from a king in spirit. Section 4. Reclaiming the Mughal Throne, a masterclass in strategic comeback. We are now entering the rebirth phase of our historical timeline. The Humayun executing this comeback is not the entitled prince who fled a decade earlier. He is hardened, he's wiser, and he is ready to go on the offensive. Look at how systematically he moves here. Step 1. In 1550, he reclaims Kabul. But this time, he doesn't rely on slow traditional troop movements. He uses the very surprise attacks that once defeated him. Step 2. He secures Kandahar, blending military siege tactics with smart diplomacy to win over locals. And finally, Step 3. The monumental Battle of Sirhind in 1555. The definitive, calculated strike to take back northern India. And the victory at Sirhind proves that he finally learned from his enemies' playbooks. Facing the formidable forces of Shah Suri, Humayun didn't fight alone. He leveraged deep, genuine alliances that he had painstakingly cultivated during his exile. He used his intimate knowledge of the terrain to his complete advantage. He executed rapid, surprise flanking attacks from the sides, terrifying and utterly confusing the enemy lines. It's a brilliant historical irony. The exact same guerrilla tactics that Sher Shah Suri used to destroy Humayun 15 years earlier were now the very tools of Humayun's ultimate triumph. He literally beat them at their own game. Let's move to Section 5 and see how this builds into a Persian-inspired second reign, rebuilding with new administrative wisdom. So, Humayun hadn't just grown as a military commander. His exile dramatically expanded his vision for how a government should actually be run. Spending significant time in Persia during his wandering years, he absorbed their rich culture and highly efficient governance models. He brought all of that back to initiate what we call a Persian cultural synthesis. He realized that conquering a piece of land is only half the job, right? The other half is administering it so efficiently that people actually want you to stay in power. He beautifully blended his father's rugged Mughal traditions with sophisticated Persian strategies to stabilize his reborn empire. His reforms were straight out of a masterclass in adaptable leadership. He hired highly skilled Persian officials to streamline his bureaucracy. He actually lowered taxes for farmers, which was huge, winning massive loyalty from the everyday people while still carefully balancing the budget. He modernized military training, built new schools, and elevated Persian to the official language of the government. Why does this matter? Because it created an unprecedented explosion of shared culture, poetry, and art. He wasn't just ruling by the sword anymore, he was building a cohesive society. Section 6. Tragic End and Enduring Legacy. The architectural blueprint for a golden age. Just as Humayun had finally stabilized his life's work, history dealt him a completely unpredictable blow. The timeline here is heartbreakingly brief. In 1555, he reclaims the throne in Delhi, sitting as the undisputed emperor once again. But just months later, in 1556, while walking down the steep stone stairs of his library, he trips, falls, and sustains fatal injuries. It is one of history's great tragic ironies, isn't it? A man who survived brutal wars, treacherous betrayals from his own blood, and decades of unforgiving desert exile is taken out by a simple flight of stairs. Yet, his story doesn't end there. In the 16th century, his widow, Empress Begum, commissioned a magnificent tomb in Delhi to honor his memory, ensuring his legacy was quite literally set in stone.
When we evaluate his enduring legacy, we see that while his son, Akbar, usually gets all the credit for the Mughal Golden Age, Akbar was standing entirely on Humayun's shoulders. Humayun was the resilient bridge. He modeled the inclusive rule, the diplomacy, and the Persian administrative efficiency that Akbar would later perfect. Furthermore, Humayun's tomb, with its striking central dome and stunning Persian-inspired garden layout, became the direct architectural blueprint for the most famous Mughal structure of all time, the Taj Mahal.
So I really want to leave you with this to chew on. Did Humayun's devastating early failures ultimately make him a far greater and more impactful ruler than his initial successes ever could have? If he had never lost the empire, he would have never learned the empathy, the diplomacy, or the Persian innovations that ultimately built the very foundation for India's golden age. That is the true biography of Humayun. Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating timeline explainer with me today, and I'll catch you in the next one.